There's some stuff we could check out over here, but I want to show you, since we were just talking about that callback, and I'm a murderer.
Oh,
Jeez.
goodness, JV.
Bacon for dinner.
Sorry, buddy.
Hello, my friends, and welcome back to PlayStation Underground. Thank you so much for joining us because we are playing Hob on PS4. It is coming to the console this year, and I am joined by Patrick and JV from Runic Games. Gentlemen, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having us.
Absolutely, it's our pleasure, and thank you for joining us. Now, we are playing Hob, which is a gorgeous, kind of atmospheric and I wanted to say non-dialogue driven, which is maybe the worst way to describe something, but it is a platformer, action game, adventure game. There's a lot to unpack here, but tell us a little bit about this demo that we're looking at right now, Patrick.
Okay, so this is something we just recently showed at PAX, and the interesting thing about this is, we call it a demo, but it's actually just a slice of the game as is. So that kind of gives you the idea of where we are in development right now. We're showing a new area. We're showing multiple new areas, and we're kind of hinting at some of the bigger elements of the game here in the dungeon we're going to show in a few minutes.
And that's something that I think we'll be seeing a lot of in this demo, but something that can't be understated, which is one of the sort of fundamental building blocks of Hob, and I use that term very particularly, is that you are kind of building and kind of creating and modifying the world as you go. JV, I'm very interested in your jumping mechanic. There we go.
He's
Perfect.
Yeah.
I've had a lot to drink today.
Yeah.
There was a lot of coffee.
Sure, it was coffee. As we can kind of see as JV interacts with the world itself is almost alive and mechanical in a way, and it has a lot of really interesting dynamic elements to it, and that's fundamental to your guys' design.
Yeah, you can, here's a good example. You can see kind of this stone zipper over to the right of the screen. It's separating these two areas. That's kind of a big part of, to give you a hint of how the world's built up and how it's connected, that there are different zones, and they have this kind of weird connective tissue between them. And what we're about to see is kind of how that's connected and why it's that way, because this world is kind of a world that is built, and it's kind of broken right now and disheveled, and it's the player's job to try to fix that.
And the thing that I hinted at the start of, that I so expertly hinted at the start of our video, is that you guys tell your story without pretty much any text or any dialogue or I would say formal storytelling devices. This is very much a visual story.
Yeah, correct. We do everything through, the game is heavily based on exploring and finding the environmental storytelling to kind of clue you into what's going on, what the history of the world is, and what the player's role is in this world. And we found that that's definitely a challenging way to make a game, but I think it's turning out to be a very positive thing, because it's very much up to the player and the player's own pace to go through and discover things. We definitely don't put our hands on your back pushing you through or overloading you with a lot. So it's a very relaxed pace game in a weird way.
It's nice to have a nice relaxing game once in a while. Now, do you feel like the limitations that you and the team have put on yourselves to tell this story wordlessly and through through visuals, does that kind of enable you to be more creative, to kind of, with those limitations, you really are able to push yourselves in a new direction?
Definitely, yeah. It's, I'm not going to lie, it's very challenging because you don't have the tool set that most games have.
Yeah, it could be a blessing and a curse.
Yeah, to fill in the gaps. So we've had to challenge and push ourselves to find new ways to do that. And with what you're seeing on the screen right now, what is this large structure and what is the player doing? And you can see that they're transforming it. And they're, the curiosity of what is it, what's in it, and why does it have these big chains, and why is it so difficult to get into, is something that's kind of revealed as you go through with that we hope the player will pick up. But again, we don't beat you over the head with these things. We just try to call them out and build the environment to support them. And I think the result is you get really cool stuff like this that's fun to do and to see how things transform.
So what are some of the lessons that you guys have already learned in your development that when dealing with a wordless story, what kind of things have maybe surprised you in the process?
I think one of the biggest challenges is trying to make sure that the player always knows where to go. what to do next.
Yeah, it's kind of important in a video game.
So we do. He's really on his jump game today. So we do lots of little things. We do, we'll do things like we'll have creatures going in a certain direction or calling your attention with movement to kind of give you hints, or birds flying a certain way, or we make certain things pop out in an environment that, is otherwise kind of like overgrown and hiding a lot of the elements, but we have something stand out that catches the player's eye, and we use, directional architecture here to kind of lead you around the area that you need to go to.
And it also seems like, in speaking with the game's visuals, which we definitely need to spend some time talking about, but there's kind of a balance between organic and inorganic in this game. And I don't, of course, want you to spoil anything that might be important to story, but was that intentional, kind of you guys trying to balance out those two visual palettes together in one?
Definitely. We wanted to hint that there has been things here for a long time that have kind of been left, part of the story is finding out, is it abandoned, what's happened, and nature's kind of taken over again. So there are several different parts to the game that I mentioned before, different types of areas, and some are more heavily based on old ancient architecture, and some are heavily more based on more the natural areas. And then I think we do a pretty good job of mixing them in areas like this so that you get the best of both worlds.
Right, like that creepy crawly purple thing that you just passed looks a little different from the other parts of this area.
And those actually play a huge part in the game. We're just, again, because this isn't a demo per se, it's the game. You do see them here, but we're not really going in depth with them.
Not discussing it yet.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to put our little hand on the little scanner.
Yep.
See what happens. We're coming up into sort of the second major section of the demo now.
Yep, and this is one of the big areas we're kind of introducing this time.
This is like one of my favorite parts.
It feels so satisfying. Everybody loves that thing.
Beautiful. Now, I have to ask this because I'm sure the answer is not as easy as anything that you say right now, but how do you choose a part of a game for your demo? How do you pick the part that players see that you expose, kind of a new audience to? It's
been tough for us because we've been trying, at least the last couple times, to set a rule to not take the time out to make a special demo, but to just polish up portions of the game and show those.
Right.
And because it is the game, it doesn't always show well. It might be a slow-paced area, or there might be not enough combat or too much combat or vice versa. So it's been tricky for us to decide that. So we try to just at least hit a few bullet points that we want in each area we're showing.
Yeah, as a producer, it's always a good assumption to go into these demos assuming we are going to sink a lot of time into this, even if it's part of the game. So, we treat it with a good deal of just being realistic as well.
And you guys were at PAX recently. I mean, did you come away with any interesting feedback or kind of fun lessons that you've had through new user interaction?
I think this was considered one of our most successul PAXs.
Nice.
We had a really solid build. Thank you. We showed really well. We were showing new stuff. I think it's kind of funny. We hit an interesting spot where at the end of the demo, we tell you how many secrets you find and how long it took you to get through this area, and what it inadvertently turned into was a speedrun test in the office to see who get the best time. And what we didn't realize is that's what people wanted at PAX as well. And so we had contests, people trying to get through, and they would come back and play again and try to get a better score. So that was really interesting, seeing like a component we'd never planned for the game turn out to be something that people really enjoyed.
And I want you to be able to talk a little bit about what we're seeing here, because this is another fundamental aspect of Hob.
Yeah, so this is a big part of the game here. You've come down into this underbelly of the world, and you can see there before that raise that had trees and terrain on it. And this kind of goes back to what I was pointing out earlier in the demo, the zippers between the areas, the stone zippers, and how the world is constructed, and you're raising parts of the world. You're essentially reawakening the machine that allows the world to be built, and all of this underneath can then be raised to complete that. And before you got to this area in the game, you went through what we showed at last PAX, which was where you re-enabled the electricity in the world, so now you can come down and actually turn on the machines. So the player is kind of fixing things as they go. And this is the first time we've really kind of shown a big area of what it's like down here, which is a pretty big contrast to the above, the lush natural world.
Oh yeah, contrast not only in visual design, but then you're playing with some, slightly different gameplay mechanics down here as well, right? Now, is this the first time that we're getting that environmental warping mechanic that we just saw, or is that hinted at earlier in the game as well?
No, we got that earlier in the last demo we showed.
Okay.
So you got it not too long ago.
Okay. Good.
Yeah,
so it'll be nice, familiar territory. Oh, hold on, my favorite part of the demo's coming up.
Here it comes.
What's gonna happen? I hope that came through. I hope people are wearing headphones when they watch this episode.
That went at the last minute because everybody thought it was funny.
So yeah, that actually, I know it's so trivial in the grand scheme of the vision that you guys are working with. But with that said,
yeah,
how do you come up with something like that? Like, what was decided that, hey, we need a sound effect when the character drops into this metal pipe?
We were sitting around playtesting, and somebody said there's no sound when he hits that. We need a thud. And then for the next couple days, when we sit around as a group and play, whenever the player ran down there, everybody at the same time would yell thud. So then we just got a sound from our from audio department, and we put it in there. And it's little touches like that. There's a million of them at the end that kind of add up to make the experience special.
That's one of the amazing things about a lot of art in general, but I think specifically in video games, where it is you forget that it is just millions upon millions of little things that are all built together to form the cohesive whole. And managing all that is, I'm sure, a Herculean undertaking. So kudos to you.
Thanks.
That's what I'm saying.
A lot of it just kind of happens on the fly while you're working on things. And it's not planned, but then it sometimes is a standout, and what sells the moment.
And you guys are a fairly small team, right?
Yeah, I think we're about 26 or so.
Yeah, I think we're 24 with 19 folks just on the development side of things.
Yeah.
Jeesh. A lot of work to be done then for a small team.
Yeah, everybody has to wear multiple hats in the studio, and that's a good thing.
That's often true for, I think, game development in general. But how do you, when you say that, how do you guys kind of divide labor, and what sort of work processes do you feel like works well for your studio?
Well, I mean, everybody has their discipline, their bucket they work within, but then just giving feedback to the other departments and how you can offer something else out, and then just ideas start flowing. And then if somebody can't do something but you can, everybody kind of just squeezes in and fills the gaps, and that's part of being a team, is everybody chips in. So.
Yeah, love it.
You kind of, in a small team, you can't, on a lot of larger teams I've worked on, you need sort of central sort of managers and gatekeepers, making sure folks are kind of working on the right thing. And on a smaller team, you're counting on every individual to sort of take that responsibility for their work. It's like, hey, look, like that would be super cool, but I don't really have time for that. I got this other thing to do. You don't really have a whole process around just deciding what to do on a day-to-day.
Yeah. This dungeon is the perfect example of that. This is I built this dungeon, but there were several other people in here doing lighting effects, fog, adding extra movers. Like, it really is a team effort. This couldn't have been done just by one person.
Now, one of the many ways that video games taps into film are moments like what we just saw, where you take the camera, you frame a scene, and you are really able to convey an emotion. And I think that's probably especially important for you guys because, as we said, there's really no dialogue or text to be found. So you have to do a lot of framing and a lot of visual storytelling. But that's one of my favorite things in video games, is when you take a moment and you frame something and it's big and it's beautiful and it's quiet.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's going to be a lot of that in Hob. Is that fair to say?
There is. It's especially important, also because our camera angle is usually at an angle. So when we want to highlight something, we need to pull back and show it.
Go, 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 go.
And we want to give a bigger picture. And also, it is kind of a goal. We want the player to feel small. This is a big world. You're in a big space. And we want to sell that. So we do use those camera pullbacks and angles to demonstrate a lot of that. And here's another one.
I feel like there's a lot of close calls we've had during this demo, but we're doing great. We're doing great. JV, you are a professional and a half. I think I died at that point just now when I was playing this demo earlier today.
It's a tricky balance between, always we want the player to feel nervous in areas like this. You're not supposed to be down here. So we do, we make you walk on pipes and do things like this that aren't natural so that when you do get past them, it feels like an accomplishment and you realize you are on the right path.
See, I like that, the idea that you're not supposed to be down there, the idea of what's forbidden and what's off limits. That seems especially pertinent with this game. And then I have to ask, and I'm sure we'll talk about it because we're going to be talking later on as well, but inspirations for this game are many.
Yes.
But in terms of, and I know some of, because we've already spoken, I know some of the gameplay inspirations that your studio had.
Mm-hmm.
But for telling this story, where did this inspiration come from for this kind of world-building, old, forgotten area come from?
It came from, we started out, I think, with the general type of gameplay we wanted, adventure and platforming. And then I think second, it was tone. What tone do we want? And that's a big part of Hob, as you can see, because this is actually kind of it's a dangerous, you can die in here, but it's also kind of a very relaxed experience. And we have a lot of that in Hob, but this is very different. And so we wanted, especially if you can hear the drone music going on and you can see like these god rays, that's something we're really trying to sell. It's different than other games in the similar genre. We just wanted a more kind of an ambient feel to the game. And it's definitely been a challenge trying to balance that and figure out where we lie within that. So as far as, there's definitely other games that have tones that have inspired us. With the camera shots, we're trying to do other things, more of a cinematic feel in certain areas. So it's kind of a mix. It's just something we agreed we wanted to do early on, and we've kind of, even though we've had our influences, I think we've kind of found our own groove that is Hob for this. So this feels unique to us.
I don't think we've hit a game over screen yet. So congratulations so far, JV.
We're doing okay.
Yeah.
And I say that now, and then whoop off the cliff. I hope everyone was paying attention during the section that we just passed. There's a little callback later on.
Yep, and this was the point of this area, is to introduce and to sell what is happening when what you're about to see happens and why and how it works and the connectivity throughout the world.
And up we go.
Yep.
Back onto the surface. Now, who are these cuties on screen?
These are our sprites.
Which we don't want to talk much about.
Well, we've shown them in past demos. They're definitely a big part of the game. They're in the world. They're not in this particular demo.
More, stay tuned.
Stay tuned, yeah.
This is also sort of a combat light demo as well, and there's some stuff we could check out over here, but I want to show you, since we were just talking about that callback, and I'm a murderer.
Oh,
Jeez.
Goodness, JV.
Bacon for dinner.
Sorry, buddy. All right.
Cruel and unusual.
But you can see this looks like the things you're interacting with down below.
Plug that in there. Ooh, what's gonna happen? What's gonna happen? Whoa!
That should look familiar.
He's like, hi!
And then there's a whole new area, and that's our forest area.
Ladies and gentlemen, that was Hob, which is coming to PS4 in this year. Patrick, JV, thank you, gentlemen, so much for joining us on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll see you next time.